Why would millions of readers fall in love with a murder mystery that takes place in a quiet retirement village? It's not filled with car chases, hardened detectives, or dark alleys. Instead, it's about a group of elderly friends sipping tea and solving crimes between their daily walks. The Thursday Murder Club isn't just another mystery novel. It's a phenomenon. But the question is, what makes it so irresistible, and does it really live up to its hype? At the heart of this story is Cooper's Chase, a luxury retirement village in England. From the outside, it looks like the kind of place where people spend their days gardening, playing chess, or complaining about the weather. But hidden inside this cozy little world is a secret club with a dangerous hobby. A group of retirees meet every Thursday not for knitting or bingo, but to solve cold murder cases. The club's members couldn't be more different, and that's what makes them stand out. Elizabeth is a former spy who has seen more than she lets on. She carries a sense of mystery with her, someone who knows how to read a room and uncover secrets that others would miss. Joyce, on the other hand, is warm, chatty, and writes diary-style notes that bring a lighter, humorous touch to the story. Then there's Ron, an old trade union leader, fiery and stubborn, and Ibrahim, a retired psychiatrist who approaches everything with logic and care. Together they form a group that no one would expect to be chasing down killers, and yet they do it better than most detectives. The premise itself is one of the book's biggest strengths. Murder mysteries often revolve around detectives, police, officers, or private investigators. Osman flips that idea upside down and asks, what if the people solving the crime were the ones you least expect, retired, aging, often underestimated? That twist gives the story its unique identity. It allows the narrative to mix humor with suspense, and it creates moments where wisdom and life experience matter more than speed or strength. And then comes the big turn. Their hobby isn't just about looking at unsolved cases anymore. A real murder takes place right in their backyard, shaking the peaceful rhythm of Cooper's Chase. Suddenly, the Thursday Murder Club isn't just playing detective. They're caught up in a live investigation, where the stakes are high and very real. This shift from cozy pastime to life-and-death mystery is what pulls readers in so quickly. Richard Osman, the author, has a clear gift for making this world feel alive. He doesn't just tell us about the crime. He invites us into the daily lives of his characters. The club members talk about lunch, family memories, or the aches and pains of aging, right before diving into clues and suspects. That blend of ordinary life with extraordinary mystery makes the book feel both charming and exciting. Readers don't just want to know who committed the murder, they want to spend more time with these characters, to laugh at Joyce's diary entries, or to watch Elizabeth take charge with her calm but sharp instincts. But there's something deeper, too. Underneath the humor and puzzles, the book also deals with aging, loneliness, and the search for meaning later in life. These themes strike a chord with readers across generations. For older readers, the characters reflect challenges and triumphs that feel relatable. For younger readers, it's a fresh perspective, a reminder that older people are more than background figures. They're sharp, witty, and often braver than we give them credit for. This balance between lighthearted fun and genuine depth is part of the magic. It's not easy to create a story where you can laugh at a witty remark one moment and feel moved by a reflection on aging the next. Yet, Osman manages to do it, giving the book both heart and humor. By the end of the first act, the stage is set. A quiet retirement village has transformed into the unlikely home of amateur detectives. The Thursday Murder Club is ready to solve a crime that hits closer than they ever expected. And this is where the novel starts to reveal both its brilliance and its flaws. Asterisk. The biggest strength of the Thursday Murder Club is that it dares to be different. In a world where crime fiction often feels recycled, another detective, another gruesome murder scene, another twist we've seen before, this book walks a different path. It asks, what if the greatest detectives aren't young, bold, and tough, but old, retired, and largely invisible to the world? That simple change flips the genre on its head, and it works brilliantly. At the center of this charm are the characters. They are not superheroes or masterminds in the traditional sense. Instead, they are regular people carrying a lifetime of memories, regrets, and wisdom. Elizabeth, for instance, never lets you forget she was once part of something secretive, something powerful. Even though her exact past is left blurry, Osman gives her an aura of quiet authority. She doesn't rush, she doesn't panic, and she always seems one step ahead, even when the clues appear meaningless. In a way, Elizabeth embodies the fantasy that life experience itself is the greatest detective tool. Then there's Joyce. She doesn't just narrate parts of the book. She pulls the reader closer by letting us peek into her diary entries. Her perspective is warm, often funny, and sometimes delightfully unaware. Joyce is the kind of character who makes you smile even when the subject is grim. Her everyday observations remind us that crime is happening in a world still filled with cups of tea, gossip, and half-remembered shopping lists. This mix of crime and coziness is one of the novel's secret ingredients. Ron and Ibrahim round out the group, and they bring texture. Ron is fiery, opinionated, and refuses to go quietly into old age. He's loud in a way that makes him both comic relief and an emotional anchor. Ibrahim, on the other hand, is the calm balance, always analytical, using psychology to understand suspects and even his friends. The variety in their voices means the story never feels flat. Each scene has its own rhythm because you never know who will take the lead or how their unique personality will steer the group, beyond characters. Osman's style is another reason the book works so well. His writing is simple, conversational, and sprinkled with wit. It doesn't intimidate readers with heavy descriptions or complicated structures. Instead, it feels like sitting down with a clever friend who tells stories in a way that makes you lean in closer. That accessibility is a huge reason the book reached audiences who might not normally pick up a crime novel. It is not just for mystery lovers. It's for anyone who enjoys clever people doing interesting things. The humor is another strength that cannot be ignored. Murder mysteries are often heavy, filled with tension and darkness. Here, Osman sprinkles humor like sugar on top of coffee. Just enough to make it sweet, but never enough to hide the bitterness underneath. When Joyce talks about something ordinary right in the middle of a tense situation, it doesn't feel out of place. It feels real, because life doesn't pause for drama. People still laugh, make mistakes, and notice silly details even when serious. Things happen, but perhaps the most surprising strength of the Thursday Murder Club is how it treats aging. Too often in fiction, older characters are background figures, wise mentors, comic relief grandparents, or simply forgotten. Osman refuses that. His retirees are active, sharp, and deeply human. They are vulnerable, yes, but also powerful in ways society tends to overlook. They know how to be invisible, how to get people to underestimate them, and they use that invisibility as their biggest weapon. That flips a common stereotype into something empowering, and let's not forget the setting itself. Cooper's Chase is not just a retirement village. It becomes a character in its own right. The gardens, the common rooms, the quiet hallways, they contrast beautifully with the dangerous mystery at the heart of the book. That clash between cozy and deadly is what makes the story feel fresh. You expect detectives to chase killers in big cities, not in neatly trimmed gardens where residents argue over which biscuits to buy. Yet that contrast makes the stakes feel sharper, because danger can lurk even in the most ordinary places. Finally, there's the sheer readability of the book. It is the kind of novel people fly through in a weekend, then immediately recommend to friends. Its light style, its humor, and its engaging characters make it addictive. And once you're hooked, you don't just want to solve the mystery, you want to stay in that world, surrounded by those people, even if they're fictional. That's why sequels work so well. Readers aren't just chasing answers. They're chasing companionship with these characters. In the end, what works about the Thursday Murder Club can be summed up simply. It makes the old feel new. It takes a familiar genre and reshapes it with warmth, humor, and humanity. It proves that crime fiction doesn't always have to be grim or gritty. Sometimes it can be funny, cozy, and even comforting without losing its edge, * for all its charm. The Thursday Murder Club is not without flaws. In fact, the same things that make it cozy and approachable are also the reason some readers walk away unsatisfied. It's a reminder that even the most beloved stories have cracks beneath the surface. The first big issue is the plot. On paper, it promises a neat and clever mystery, a murder in a retirement village solved by unlikely detectives. But in execution, the story often feels overstuffed. There are so many twists, so many suspects, and so many diversions that the central mystery sometimes gets lost. Instead of one clean thread pulling us from beginning to end, the book unravels into multiple strings that don't always weave back together in a satisfying way. Readers expecting a tight, Christie-like puzzle may find themselves frustrated. The mystery doesn't build in a clear, logical pattern. Instead, it hops around, leaving you entertained but occasionally confused. Another weakness is pacing. Osman's greatest strength as a storyteller is his ability to write charming dialogue and witty side notes. But those same digressions slow the story down. In one moment, the club might be closing in on a crucial clue. In the next, we're pulled into pages of diary-style rambling or side jokes about biscuits, flowers, or past lovers. On their own, these moments are delightful. Together, they sometimes weaken the tension of the mystery. When you're in the middle of solving a murder, you want the pressure to rise. Instead, the narrative often pauses to chat, laugh, or wander off in another direction. For some readers, that's cozy. For others, it's frustrating. Then there's the matter of stakes. Murder mysteries usually make you feel the weight of death. Even when the story is lighthearted, there's a sense that a life has been lost and justice matters. In the Thursday Murder Club, however, the humor often overshadows the tragedy. The victims feel like background figures, and the grief of their deaths rarely lingers. The focus remains firmly on the witty banter and the club's adventures. This creates an emotional gap. Readers don't always feel the danger or the sadness that should be at the heart of a murder story. It's as if the crimes are puzzles to be solved rather than tragedies that change lives. Another criticism lies in the mystery's resolution. Without spoiling specifics, the ending can feel rushed and less impactful than the build-up suggests. Osman fills the book with red herrings and false leads, which are fun in the moment, but when the final solution comes, it doesn't always feel earned. Some twists feel inserted for shock rather than carefully planted clues. Readers who love solving mysteries alongside the characters may feel cheated, because the answers aren't always ones they could realistically guess from the evidence given. That weakens the satisfaction that comes from a well-crafted mystery. The tonal shifts can also be jarring. The book tries to balance comedy and tragedy, but it doesn't always succeed. One chapter might make you laugh out loud, while the next throws in a heartbreaking detail about aging or death. Both elements are valuable, but the transitions between them aren't always smooth. Instead of blending into a bittersweet harmony, they sometimes clash, leaving readers unsure how to feel. It's like sipping tea that suddenly tastes like whiskey, surprising, but not always pleasant. There's also the question of character depth. While the main quartet is delightful, not all of them are equally developed. Joyce and Elizabeth shine with distinct voices, but Ron and Ibrahim sometimes fade into the background, used more for group balance than for fully fleshed-out storytelling. The same goes for the supporting characters. Police officers, suspects, and side figures come and go without leaving a strong impression. This unevenness means the world feels charming, but not fully alive. And then we come to the elephant in the room: accessibility versus depth. Osman wanted to create a story that anyone could pick up and enjoy, and he succeeded. But in doing so, the mystery itself often feels surface level. Serious crime fiction fans might find it too light, too meandering, too focused on laughs instead of logic. The book thrives as entertainment, but stumbles as a tightly built detective novel. To put it simply, the Thursday Murder Club sometimes feels like two books competing with each other. One is a cozy, heartwarming story about friendship and aging, filled with wit and charm. The other is a murder mystery that demands structure, tension, and emotional weight. When those two books blend, the result is delightful. But when they pull apart, the cracks show. The pacing slows, the plot feels overcomplicated, and the stakes lose their bite. None of these flaws ruin the novel, clearly. Its success speaks for itself. But they do explain why the book divides readers. For some, its quirks are part of its magic. For others, they're signs of a story that doesn't quite live up to its potential. Asterisk when you strip away the charm, the humor, and the clever setup. The Thursday Murder Club faces one core problem, and it's not about the number of twists or the pacing or even the uneven character depth. The real issue runs deeper. It's the tension between coziness and consequence, between treating murder as a playful puzzle and remembering that murder is, in fact, a tragedy. At its heart, a murder mystery should balance two truths. First, it must entertain with cleverness. Suspects, red herrings, secrets waiting to be revealed. Second, it must acknowledge the cost of the crime. A life has been taken, someone has been lost, and justice is not just a game, it matters. In Osman's book, the first truth dominates while the second truth often fades into the background. That's the big problem. Think about it. The victims in the Thursday Murder Club rarely leave a strong emotional mark. Their deaths are not the beating heart of the story. Instead, they become excuses for the club's antics. The retirees banter, they joke, they sip wine, and they crack open old files. It's fun, but in the process, the gravity of murder gets blurred. A victim becomes less a person with a life, and more a stepping stone in a puzzle. Readers are entertained, yes, but they aren't necessarily moved. This creates a strange disconnect. On one page, Osman invites you to laugh at Joyce's diary, or Elizabeth's razor-sharp wit. On the next, he reminds you that someone has been brutally killed. The problem is that those reminders don't always land. They feel like whispers in a room full of laughter. You hear them, but they don't linger. You don't grieve, you don't feel the loss, you just move on to the next clue. And while that keeps the story light and enjoyable, it also strips the mystery of its emotional power. The irony is that Osman does touch on themes of mortality, aging, and loss throughout the book. But those moments are mostly about the characters reflecting on their own lives, not about the victims whose deaths drive the plot. This means the novel's emotional weight is uneven. Readers care deeply about the detectives, their quirks, their fears, their friendships, but they rarely care about the people who were killed. And in a murder mystery, that imbalance can weaken the story at its core. Another angle of this problem is how the book treats risk. In most crime novels, you feel the danger closing in. If the detectives don't act, someone else might die. There's a ticking clock, an atmosphere of dread. But in the Thursday Murder Club, the tone often softens the danger. Because the main characters are wrapped in humor and wit, it rarely feels like they're truly at risk. Elizabeth will crack the case, Joyce will brighten the mood, and the club will live to solve another mystery. This predictability reduces tension. Murder feels less like an urgent threat and more like an intellectual exercise. And here's the contradiction. The very thing that made the book so successful, its warmth, its lighthearted tone, its cozy village charm, is also the reason it struggles to fully satisfy as a murder mystery. Cozy crime has always lived in this space, of course. Agatha Christie's Miss Marple balanced quaint villages with deadly crimes. But Christie never let you forget that murder was ugly, cruel, and final. Osman, however, often lets the charm win over the cruelty. The reader walks away smiling but not shaken, entertained but not transformed. This raises a bigger question about genre itself. Should murder mysteries always carry weight? Do they owe us realism and emotional truth, or is it enough to simply entertain? Osman chose to prioritize comfort, and judging by the sales, millions of readers were grateful for that choice. But at the same time, critics argue that this comfort comes at a cost, the cost of depth. Without that sharp edge of consequence, the story risks feeling shallow, like a puzzle book dressed up as a novel. The big problem, then, is not a simple flaw that can be fixed with tighter editing or fewer subplots. It's a built-in contradiction. At the heart of the series, it's a murder mystery that doesn't really want to deal with murder. It wants to deal with friendship, aging, wit, and warmth. And while those elements make it unique, they also create a ceiling, a limit on how powerful, moving, or memorable the story can be as crime fiction. Some readers love it for that very reason. They don't want the heaviness of a true crime novel or the cold precision of a police procedural. They want a safe place where death is treated as a puzzle, not a wound. But for others, the lack of consequence feels hollow. It leaves them wondering, if murder isn't truly shocking here, then what's the point of the mystery? So the real question becomes not just about Osman's book, but about us, the readers. What do we want from a murder mystery? To be comforted, or to be confronted? To escape, or to wrestle with the dark truths of life and death? The Thursday Murder Club makes its choice clear. It chooses coziness over consequence. Whether that's a strength or a weakness depends entirely on what you're looking for.